Thank you, Mr. Lecter. Let's say good afternoon to our public and our parents and stakeholders who are viewing us today, November 30th, 2022. So I'll now call the meeting to order at 1:35. Have an opening prayer by Trustee Darwood. Please go ahead.
It's me, Henry.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. If you'll all join me in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Heavenly Father, this Advent season, we especially are in need of peace. War rages on in our world. It impacts the daily lives of millions in different ways. This year, as much as ever, we need Jesus, Prince of Peace, in our world and in our hearts. During this Advent, we pray that Jesus transforms our world as we await his coming. And God, we ask for your guidance and wisdom on our meeting. In Jesus' name, amen. Father, Son, Spirit.
Thank you, Pastor. So I really treaty acknowledgements. We are a party to Treaty 6, and as such, we wish to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground for many indigenous peoples. We recognize the diversity of First Nations who have at one time lived across the territory, as well as the presence of the Métis Nation. Mr. Bouchard, any public forum request? We go to the approval of the agenda. Someone approve the agenda for us?
I move that the board approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. We'll move forward with minutes. Oh, sorry. All in favor? For the question, sorry. Okay. Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. We'll go to the approval of the minutes. Any errors, omissions? Okay, can I ask someone to approve the minutes, please? Thank you, Justice.
I move that the board approve the minutes of the regular meeting held October 19th, 2022 as circulated.
Okay, any discussions on the minutes? Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a follow-up question. Did we receive a response from the premier to the letter that was sent?
No. Just a second. Kaylin, did we receive anything? No.
Thank you. Any further discussions? Okay, I'll then call the question. Okay, we have two trustees online. Please, if I'm not watching, you get my attention, please. Okay, and be quick as I'll be going back and forth. All right. So I call the question. All in favor? Okay, carried unanimously again. So attached point 3 is our board goals and priorities. And we'll go to number 4, at the board chair's reports. Any comments or clarifications there? Yeah, I can see my own handwriting. On the last bullet, it's overview of public education in our, that was the discussions we had. And then the impact of COVID in our schools when we met with the as we show in some of our discussion. Okay. 4.2. Mr. Bouchard's reports. Any questions or comments from him? Yeah, go ahead. Trustee, yeah.
Under faith leadership, I didn't record the bullet, but it's one of the sub points in it regarding the school visits. Has this activity been done before? I don't recall seeing it previously. And what is the success out of that?
So yeah, many of those activities are annual activities. But those would be activities that Claire, the director of faith, would complete. Lori, I don't know if you've received any feedback on any of those.
No, I just know that Claire had been at these schools and that it went well. That's all we know so far. So.
Okay. Now I can't find my question, the bullets, but here it is, so I remember. There was a meeting with the school resource officer to examine and enhance lockdown protocols within the division.
I believe that was Assistant Superintendent Malloy. She can speak to that.
Yeah, just we're looking through lockdown procedures and learnings and growing through it. So just reviewing procedures with him and getting feedback. He's been working with us throughout the past few years and providing feedback. So the school resource officer has given an opportunity to take a look at any changes we're considering to provide.
Thank you. Who else? Okay.
Henry, I have my hand up.
Trustee Tagwood, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is number 2, and it's about bullet number 9, the Ukrainian Family Night. And I don't know, hopefully you can hear me all right. My voice isn't very good. I was just wondering if you could expand on that, just how many families were represented and was it well attended by other families in the community? I'm just curious because of everything that's happening.
Assistant Superintendent Cardinal, any feedback on the Ukrainian night?
If I remember correctly, there were about 12 families in attendance, and then there were others that attended online. They were able to attend virtually.
Okay. Well, that's good. That sounds good. My next question is on number 4, the visionary leadership. And I just, I noticed that the last bullet, the mental health literacy resources, I wondered if this related to the new mental health grant or if that was before this grant.
So that is, we've been using mental health literacy resources for many years, but not at the elementary level. So this is a pilot at that level. Anything to add, Assistant Superintendent Cardinal?
So yes, they're just essentially, the resources are ready to go. They're just reviewing them from a Catholic lens right now to ensure that they're good to go with our schools. But we're just very close to making sure that all of our schools have access.
Well, that's really good that it's going to be in the elementary now too. That's excellent.
Yeah, but we promised to be a part of this pilot probably right before COVID. And so now we're finally getting to it, so.
3 years later. Oh, well.
Yes, yeah.
It's okay. At least we're getting to it.
Yeah.
And my last question is about the blanket exercise, number 6, that was held at St. Augustine. I've been a party to a blanket exercise and I find them excellent. I just wondered if this is done at all our schools. Has it been done at all the schools, or are there plans to do this with Ramona now? So that's my question.
Our schools have all done the blanket exercise. In fact, we're now repeating those exercises at schools on a cyclical basis. So yeah, it's just an ongoing practice. Anything to add? Lori?
No, essentially, yes, all the schools have been through the blanket exercise, but now, you know, it's been a number of years, so it's time, it can be time to revisit it. It just depends on the administrator and the request from them.
Okay, it's an excellent exercise. I was lucky to be able to partake in that. It would be great for, I don't know if all the other trustees have had a chance to do that, but it'd be great if we could. Well, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Talbot. There are no further questions. We'll go to 4.2. Oh, wait, do
I have two last questions. So under leading learning, bullet number 7. Under leading learning. Sorry, I didn't mark which, there, number 5, bullet number 7. It talks about the Brene Brown work. Is there a specific program that was being offered by or through Brene Brown? Or is
So Lori's been working with the Women in Leadership CAS organization in Alberta. She's, I think, the chair of that committee. But there is an Alberta facilitator who's officially trained in Brene Brown's work, and that's Mike McMahon, superintendent of Fort Vermilion School Division. But I know in addition to this work, he'll be doing some further work in February. And Lori, why don't you share a little bit about that work and what you guys have talked about? It's quite interesting.
Sure. So what happened was I was contacted by Bella Lecce. She's one of the leading facilitators for CAS, and she asked if the Women in Leadership group would like to do a session. And then it blossomed, when we started talking, it blossomed into a pre-conference. Like, okay, sure. That's, you know, why? Apparently Tara tells me I don't know how to say no. So anyways, and so yes, we organized a pre-conference, and what we did was right now we are, as a group, we're reading the book Nerve. And so this kind of came out of that work. It's about 2 women who were presidents of universities, so the UBC and U of A, and they wrote this book called Nerve. And so they identify a number of issues that women often face in leadership. And so we took those issues and talked about what is a positive way to mitigate some of those issues. So for example, imposter syndrome, or what else? Or I can't remember what else at this moment, but there's just a number of things that we talked about. So we did that in the afternoon. We looked at those issues, and in the morning we looked at, with Mike McMahon, Brene Brown's work, and looking at
Wasn't that around Dare to Lead?
yeah, well, yes, part of it was from Dare to Lead, and it was just kind of a snippet about looking at courage and how to get in the arena, if you're familiar with Brene Brown's work, right? And so we used that work to shine a lens on some of the issues that face leaders, and particularly women in leadership. And so it was actually very positive conversations around, you know, what challenges do women face, and also what do men face as well, because it's not, some of these things are not just gender specific. So it was a really great day. Got a lot of fabulous feedback.
And my last question is on, I think it's the last book where you were before, number 7, school authority, operations and resources. I have an acronym here. I can't
Number
remember.
7.
Yeah, that was good. I knew the name of that. Nope. It is bullet number 4 and the last bullet both refer to Power School and somewhat issues in there or adaptations that are needed to work best for this division. Is there a high-level overview of some of the challenges or gaps that need to be filled within that program?
The Power School is quite a large piece of software, I guess I would say. The challenge with Power School is it really allows for configuration to your specific needs as a division. So it allows users to customize the software to create their own reports, their own report cards, say, for example. The challenge with our division is that we're quite small. We don't have someone on staff who's been trained or has the capacity to write in code and to adapt that software. So every time we want to change things, we have to hire that out with third parties, which gets expensive. But it's not to the point of paying for, somebody at $100,000, for example. But every time you have a customization, you're facing with having to third party that and the time it takes. Some of the customizations we get are through PowerSchool, and that's, a 6 to 8 week turnaround. Once the request goes into when we get the work done. So you can imagine that's very slow, cumbersome. And it's just kind of the reality we face, but we're constantly looking at ways to streamline that work, to work with third parties, to find other software people that can help us in our processes. I think that's what it's speaking to on a high level.
So we can share that we maybe reached out to the bigger boss that are also on PowerSchool. If you have
Yes.
somebody on staff that,
We do. Yeah.
oh, we do. Okay. I'm thinking as a small board, I have a partner that are able to spare.
Yeah, so for example, we were looking for attendance reports by school and divisionally recently with the amount of illness that's been going on. We partnered with Elk Island Catholic, who does have someone that does some of that programming to borrow their code and to train our SIS persons. So we do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So 4.3. Secretary Treasurer, remember.
My apologies, Mr. Leader, for the late reporting and other priorities, unfortunately. Reporting on that.
It's okay. Any questions or comments? To the reports?
I have one, Henry.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, as far as the facility management, I see you review of joint use and planning draft agreement with Wolf Creek. Is that just to do with transportation, or is that also playgrounds or other areas of joint use?
Joint use and planning agreements cover two aspects. What municipality and we have for facilities, and then how we are able to access them. Historically, and then the other aspect is planning with regards to school sites and community planning. So there's two aspects of those joint use and planning agreements. Quite commonly with our larger areas, we do have joint use agreements in place. We've got a couple of voids in terms of whether we have a joint use agreement in place. The agreement is intended to cover both of those areas. Likewise, we may have agreements, I know with Leduc and the city of Beaumont. We've got agreements with regard to planning. Beaumont has a school site planning committee, as does the city of Leduc. Those committees are kind of outlined already. The requirement is both under the Education Act as well as the Municipal Government Act that there's a formal arrangement between municipalities and school boards in their realm. So we'll be a party to about 13 different agreements, excluding any small villages or other formed areas. I was approached by 6 summer villages thus far. We've identified that they are not part of our formed areas. So they're not going to be included. We are not included in your joint use agreements at this time. So the agreement right now that we've got a draft we've been working on includes the County of Pinoca with Wolf Creek, who has boundaries with coterminous and exceeding the County of Pinoca. As we also have schools within the County of Pinoca, we are a partner, and we've all agreed that a 3-part agreement is what is viable in that area.
Is there also one with the town, city of Lacombe?
Eventually, I've reached out in the past. I'm now waiting for municipalities to reach out to me in terms of getting their agreements in place.
Okay, I just wondered about our new gym and so on, if there's going to be a joint use as far as the city using it for other things.
That's what he said. He's waiting for them to reach out and see, because some of those facilities are all over the place. And the cities have to reach out to him since he's done his part.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mr. Bouchard, go ahead.
Just further to Secretary Treasurer Lutka's explanation. I've got scheduled on the December board meeting a discussion about the JUPAs, as well as we'll be bringing forward 3 templates for trustees to get an understanding of. And we'll be talking about how the board wishes to direct administration to proceed with those agreements as they are kind of negotiated and resolved by administration. So that's on the December board meeting.
Any comments on that? We're trying to use just gone into the municipal listing a year ago. And then people are trying to negotiate it now. Okay, there are no further comments. We will move on to the attached money reports. Yeah, go ahead.
Those attachments were just to jump to the report, my report. They're provided to the province's information as in terms of historical with regards to direct costs with regards to COVID, as well as current information with regards to enrollment and staffing levels. Those documents were included as part of the bundle of documents, including the AFS. And they were given to the audit committee, so I've just presented it as information at this point, as information going into the province at the same time to the trustees. I didn't prepare a formal report with regards to them.
So we will move into our business items. Okay, the demography report will have Assistant Secretary now. Walk us through. Thank you.
So for the past 5 years, we have been collecting demographic data for English language learners, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students, as well as education students. And we've just been tracking the percentage by school, who has, the higher percentages, etc. You can see in the charts provided the numbers for this year. Something that is of note and that's provided in your background is that the percentage of Tier 3 inclusive education numbers do increase each year. The increase from 20 to 23 was 6.5%, and there are currently 85 Tier 3 students in the division, which is basically 24% of all the students with inclusive needs in the division. Part of this increase is due to the fact that kindergarten PUF students are no longer funded, and so they are counted in our Tier 3 numbers as well. So if you have any questions about the charts provided.
No, my only comment is looking at the data, like I alluded to in our car meeting. You can see some population like the first English foreign born and learners, and then the indigenous populations are all concentrated. It's just they are all over the place. So again, to me and then to the trustees, this is why when it comes sometimes looking at our resource and how we disperse our resources, we have to be mindful of some of these areas because of the need, right? And thinking division wide, again, it's always good to be thinking division wide when it comes to some of these dissemination of resources. Okay, any comments or questions?
Just one question about the English language learners. I just noticed the foreign board and then the Canadian board, and it says total. Well, it's not the total of those two. Is there a third category that's being added in there?
There may be those that are not calculated in one of those codes. That's a possibility as well.
Well, it's, foreign born 2, Canadian born 10, total 19.
Yeah.
I thought it should have been 12, but so there's other students counted in there that are not foreign born and not Canadian born. Anyways, somehow. You know what I mean? It didn't add
Yeah,
up.
Yep, would you like me to look into that further?
Well, I was just curious as to where the total 19 came from.
I understand, yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. All right, we will move to the action item. 6.1. Go ahead, Mr. Lafleur.
Mr. Chair, with regards to 6.2, we do have a time on that. The external auditor was asked to be in attendance at 2:15. So my apologies for not expressing that when the agenda was being set. So following this transfer to reserve presentation, we can skip until to future other
Yeah.
items.
I can do that. It's good.
Transfers to reserves, in the financial statements, there's a number of provisions for items being transferred from our unrestricted unspent funds to restricted either capital or operating reserves. Traditionally, we've always we've presented it at this time, and traditionally we've also at this time, because they're kind of standard transfers, we've included in the financial statements. But formally, we do have to have board approval of these transfers. So the standard ones being the school surpluses and school generated fund surpluses are transferred to operating reserves. Last year in April, the board approved a number of items under projects. So that has been reflected in the operating reserves or capital reserves. And they were subject to ministerial approval. We received that approval so that we could reflect them in the financial statements. So those ones, a number of these items are either matter of course of business, but or also been approved by the board. But there are some transfers that are neither. So looking at detail sheet, we've identified how we utilize reserves that have been set up by the board. So how they've been utilized over the course of the year. And then any additions to those reserves as well. I'll draw your attention to a couple of items here. And for the benefit of trustees online, I'm going to share a screen. Hopefully you can see this. So under our operating reserves, the instruction surplus reserve projects, there's $192,000. That's been approved by the board. Items that haven't been approved by the board at this point in time is the Excel Academy and the nutrition grant. The Excel Academy, we budget annually for $5,000 per year, but the Academy only takes place over 2 years. So we've spread out the resources that we need to fund that over 3. So at the end of 3 years, we'll have $15,000, but the spending of that $15,000 takes place over years 2 and 3. So that $5,000 transfer to reserve is just to set up the bank account for the future of the program. The nutrition grant is a little bit different. What we've identified is any unspent funds by schools and have repooled them to be redistributed on a needs basis. So we've again looked at setting up this reserve so that it's not included as in terms of the general surplus of the division or unrestricted surpluses. That reserve is specific and targeted to nutrition grant. And what administration does is it requests school make a request for an enhancement to their programs. They get nutrition grant funding every year, but whatever is unspent, we're repooling and then redistributed to enhance individual school programs. Those enhancements might be in terms of furniture and equipment. It might be in terms of expanding the program instead of just students in need, maybe to all students or a certain grade grouping of students. Just whatever they feel could enhance their program and serve students better. And we're finding that that works to use the surplus funds in that way, but still within the category that the original funding was established. The last one on this one with regards to 22-23 budget, again, this was approved by the board in terms of utilizing surplus funds for this current year. But to reflect it in our financial statements and move it over to that operating reserve, there was over $695,000 used for this year's budgeting in order to meet our expenditure plan. With regards to, that's all under the instruction area. Under operations and maintenance, there was $45,000 pre-approved with regard to surplus reserve projects. In terms of our capital reserves, this is a lot more expanded than it has been in the past. We have those surplus reserve projects that have been identified as capital related, both with regards to instruction or with plant operations and maintenance, and that's for a fleet replacement and for board and assistant administration. And then the details in the rest of this report is intended to give a general overview of what those surplus, that reserve fund is set up for, and an approximate timeline. I try and make sure that there is a timeline in place so that reserves don't become stale in terms that those funds are actually either repurposed if that timeline has expired and can be utilized for students as quickly as possible. In some cases, timelines might be quite extended. It might be 3-4 years out, either because there's an accumulation or we're seeing a future need and we're maybe building the fund. So that's why I try with this report to have those two other areas in terms of description and in terms of timeline available so that there's always that common knowledge of what that fund was intended to be used for and when it should be used up by. And if there's surplus, that should be able to be utilized for students that we currently have.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I do have 3 questions, although one of them I think is just for clarity. But in regards to school funds or school-based funds, not collected, but school-based funds or school.
SGF, school
Okay.
generated
There's
funds.
school generated funds and then there's school surpluses in terms of their budget.
Yes, the school surpluses, thank you. So what actions and or assurances have been put in place to ensure that schools use to the fullest extent their school-based funds or school-generated funds? I know this is a conversation we've had, we saw some room within their budgets, and it has been a conversation to move forward and ensure that schools are using, yes, even in that area. So has there been any progress in that area?
What we,
I guess what I would say, since we last spoke, we had, was it a 1-hour session with our administrators, Tara and Lori, that we had on monitoring budgets and variances? We did an hour session at our PD, admin PD, on this very item. Was to facilitate their learning and make sure that they're on top of their variances so that we don't end up with surprises at the end of the year.
Thank you. In regards to the planned utilization of unrestricted net assets for allocations to schools, it looks like the $695,000. But just for clarity, is this the item that we got ministerial approval for the requested projects from school?
no,
Okay,
this is over and above, and this would have been submitted as a request when we submitted our budget as a division.
Okay.
In terms of utilizing surpluses from schools within the budget.
So this would have been approved by the board last spring.
I knew it was somewhere, just couldn't pinpoint exactly, it sounded familiar, but. And then in regards to the nutrition grant, I know we had a discussion before, and as a board, we discussed what to do with schools' extra funds in regards to the nutrition grant funding. And I know that it was redistributed to areas of need, but now it looks like we still have extras in that area. So can you identify any dangers of continually creating surpluses with this grant?
Well, the province hasn't made any, or hasn't communicated to us that they'll claw back or anything. So we are in the second year of this process where we have schools apply to have access to these surplus monies. I would say though, we also did some PD on this at our administrators meeting. And there was some improper coding by schools. That was part of the issue. So it's just cleaning that up. And we also gave some clear direction to make sure that we were really reaching out to our school communities to make sure that we were feeding kids that needed to be fed. So I would expect that number to be less next year. I really would.
So as a follow-up to that, being only in year 2 of this and seeing a surplus as a board or a division, we should probably give it another year to see how that goes before we start looking at any consideration of changing.
I would suggest that.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I just have one question, just with respect to SGF, just again, is there a detailed plan for some of these schools holding money? Like some of these schools, they have detailed plan for accommodating the SGF.
I have to go back and review what they submitted with the fall. And what their plan is for utilization of that. I can't say that it was strong in the spring, but I don't think they were anticipating to have as much in surplus of school chairman funds as they do.
All right, thank you. So, let's see,
Mr. Chair, can we just have a couple of minute recess? I would like Secretary Treasurer Luck to just go over one point of item that came up in the committee of the whole meeting before we bring in the auditor.
Okay, all right. Good, yeah, let's. We will take. Yeah, well,
Should we make the motion for the chapter of reserves first?
oh, then do that and come back. No, I want to do, okay. Let's do that. We have the visitor also waiting. Okay. We'll have someone make that motion. See, Mr. Leonard is ready. Go ahead.
I move that the board approve the transfers of funds to operating and capital reserves for the year ending August 31st, 2022 as presented.
Thank you. Any further discussions? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, carried unanimously. All right, thank you. We will take 10 minutes recess. Come back at, no, we take 8 minutes, come back at 2:20. All right.